Seeking the wise,
with Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy,
covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
Welcome to the Wise podcast. I am Aaron Keith, and along with me is Alexander.
Hello, everyone. So great to be with you today.
And today we're going to be doing an overview of the philosophy. We initially did one of these as like the very first episode or pre-episode that we ever released over 6 years ago, but we're going to be doing a refresh on it today to kind of explain to you what the philosophy is all about, why we should consider bringing it more into our lives, the lifestyle that it brings you, the benefits that you gain, and then discuss some of the tools and techniques that will assist you along your way on your self-growth journey.
Yes, and this is a very needed little compact way to get people to understand the broader principles of this whole philosophy. And again, we do want to come in there to say that it is called a philosophy, the Just philosophy, because it is a way of life. It's not just limited to conceptual, and we'll get into how we relate that into even 5 different levels to help us to make sure that we're staying on track, so to say.
Yes, this is the Wise podcast because we help you understand what are the wise questions to be asking yourself, but we do discuss the Just philosophy. And Alexander, can you tell us what the Just philosophy stands for?
Well, the acronym of J.U.S.T stands for Journeys Unite Seeking Transformation. Basically from the principle that most all of our issues, whether they're health issues or mental issues, they stem from a failure to communicate in our relationships. And I also like to broaden it into 3 different levels of relating with oneself, relating to a higher power, and then relating to other people. And all 3 of these relatings and the level of communication that you have with these 3 different levels determines a large part of your overall wellness. And so that's why the Just philosophy is a philosophy, a frequency-based philosophy for overall wellness on all 5 levels.
And so Alexander and I have been doing this podcast for just over 6 years, but we've been together. I've been learning from Alexander for just about 8 years. And so I kind of play the role sharing a lot of my experiences, and I can definitely attest to this philosophy completely changing my life, bringing structure into my life, almost like a recipe. If you want wellness in your life, if you want to bring in more contentment, if you want to make more sense of the world and what it seems to be very, chaotic, all the external happenings that are going on, this is going to give you that recipe to lead you to live a life more of wellness. And the great thing is you just utilize the foundational principles, the tools and techniques that are a part of this Just philosophy. And if you are honest with yourself and you put in the time, the effort, the discipline into the practice, you will notice yourself changing and becoming closer to living a life of wellness.
Yes, and this was a philosophy that I started in my late 20s, first of all, through studying every philosophy and religious and spiritual path that I could get my hands on, but being unable to find a complete system in any of them. And so that's what this is. This philosophy is a mash up, so to say, of lots of different paths and ways, also brought together in a way for the modern day to be able to make a deeper understanding, once again, from just the intellect to actually putting this stuff into daily practicing. And those daily practices become your lifestyle. And so this is basically, once again, a philosophy, which is a way of life that you practice. First of all, it begins with structure and discipline and accountability. But after you do it for a certain amount of time, it becomes your new way of being. So it's not seen as it's going to be this discipline and this structure like forever. It's a path to get you through that so that it becomes your consistent. And once it becomes your consistent, then there's a whole lot less effort actually put into the discipline and the structure and even accountability to a certain extent.
So this isn't for one particular person of one particular religion, right? This can apply to almost anybody.
Yes, I mean, we like to say that 99% of this philosophy is uh, actually able to be practiced. And there's only one small part that is around belief. And, belief is connected to spiritual paths and religious paths. And we don't want to step on anyone's toes, no matter what someone's belief is, because again, this is really a philosophy about how we communicate with ourselves, with that divine energy, whatever somebody wants to call that, and then the people around us that we're in contact with. So, a huge part of this philosophy is conscious communication and what that actually means and why that's different from just talking with people. And it is about reciprocation, about information being reciprocated back and forth and true communication rather than being talked at or feeling judged. And here's, I feel like, is a good place to bring up like those 5 levels before we get much further, is to make sure that we're practicing things on the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, subtle energy, and the spiritual or religious. And so those are the 5 levels. We put them in order, and I didn't just give them in order, so I'll give them in order with an acronym of SMEEP, which is spiritual, then mental, then emotional, then energetic, and then physical. And see, when we have any kind of issue in our lives, all 5 of these levels are being affected. And most of our culture just focuses on the physical. Now they've started to focus a little bit more on the mental, where stress is involved. And then finally, Western medicine is seeing the effect that emotions have, but it's still the energetic is still missed. And for a lot of people, I think the spiritual slash religious level is missed by a lot of people. So this is an all encompassing with all of these different levels and how we view them as equally as important. And why I actually have a 5 levels practice that I suggest to people to practice on a daily basis. It takes me about an hour and a half to go through the 5 levels, spending 10 to 20 minutes in each level. And so we'll be getting more and more into that and those suggestions and other tools here as well.
Yeah, Alexander, when I met you, I was at a low point in my life. I had just had a big breakup, and I had been very isolated, had no social structure, living in the middle of nowhere, having just moved, and then, having my partner leave. And I really was very confused at how to live life and was really operating out of my subconscious, which we will tie back into our energetic design in a minute. But I would say this philosophy gave me, again, a structure to live within to make sense of life from a more authentic way of living, and brought
Yes,
me closer to, definitely brought me closer to the spiritual level and the relationship with the universe, the divine, source, God, whatever term that many people out there listening call it. Definitely brought in that sense, having being brought up Catholic and having a lot of fear brought into my life, and not really developing a relationship with that divine source, and kind of like pulling away from it because of that fear that I took on from the trauma of not understanding the religion, from learning from a childhood perspective. But definitely strengthen that. But again, also making sense of life from the energetic point of view, and seeing how everything relates. Not everything is chaos. Not everything just happens. There is a reason for everything happening, and how God or the universe or the divine is constantly communicating with us and trying to help us along with our individual growth on all these 5 levels. So I wanted to ask you, what are some things that people may be going through that this philosophy could be a big help to them? Like right off the bat, one is, what I went through where I'm just questioning life. Like I really don't understand the world and I don't feel like I relate to it, kind of feeling like an outsider or that I don't belong. And, you know, detaching is is only going to make you feel more isolated and more depressed. This is actually, incorporating your life and understanding how you fit within the ecosystem. But what are some others that you would say?
But yeah, certainly right off the bat, sense of feeling lost or not being connected. The things that it's very useful for is loss in all areas, whether that's a death or losing relationships, mending relationships in with family members, being able to accept people for who they are and to respect yourself for who you are, and to realize that this comes down to the conscious communication that I was speaking about earlier, and how we do communicate with ourselves with that higher energy and with others, and that we happen to feel that life is always trying to help us to evolve, but that's not always around our wants. Many times there's a difference between what we need to happen in our lives and to approach things in order to evolve, rather than what we want. And so it can help with a myriad of things. Another very important thing is major health issues, major and minor health issues. We get into describing how, most all physical or mental issues begin in this spiritual level with a doubt. And then we map out how it goes from the spiritual to the mental. And this is where the judge sits, and the judge decides whether this is good or bad or right or wrong. If it's seen as bad or wrong, then there many times there's a negative emotional reaction, which weakens our energetic field or our aura that even Western medicine has legitimized now. And then where it affects our energetic field makes our physical body more susceptible to injuries and illnesses. So when we're dealing with something on the physical level, see, it's very important to also be working on the emotional, on the energetic. And when you work on the emotional, it's going to shift the energetic. And all of this starts with mentally how we are perceiving it. And so we've got many different podcasts that break down these 5 levels and the specifics of each one. And of course, this episode, we're just introducing them. And then we're going to eventually get into the 5 pillars and other tools of the philosophy as well as we go through this session.
Yeah, there are many systems out there, many opinions, many different techniques, and most of them are centered around just the mental. It's just knowledge. Here's what you do. But if you really don't practice that or even incorporate it on the other 4 levels outside of the mental, it's going to take a lot longer or maybe never to implement into your being as part of your knowing and part of your life being as you go day to day. But one of the really cool and critical parts of this philosophy is the difference between self-development work and relationship work.
Mm-hmm.
And just making that distinction is extremely important because we have our individual self development work, and it's vital that we have at least a foundation of that down to bring to our relationships, because our relationships are going to challenge us in a different way outside of our self development work. And so we actually present on this podcast, utilizing the Just philosophy, different tools and techniques around relationships and intimate relationship relating when it comes to that, because there's just a whole different energy and perspective that we need to bring when dealing with that very intimate partner, because they're going to trigger us on a whole different level outside of what we may encounter on our our daily external events.
Yes, and I think that's a very good point, because I find that most people have a challenge discerning between the difference between relationship work and self development work. And, self development work is around breaking family lineage, breaking patterns, um, working to uh, feel fulfilled in your life, whether that's what you do for your job or those types of things. And see, a person could be in a relationship and want or feel the need to quit their job to follow a certain self development path. But if they quit their job and it causes their wife or their husband, their partner, stress, and then that creates problems in the relationship, then see, making that decision to do what you feel drawn to do from a self development standpoint, but then it hampers and puts pressure on the relationship, that, from my view, needs to be seen as two different things. And see, it would be ideal if the couple could discuss this and both parties get completely comfortable with it and maybe make some adjustments in their lifestyle to where the person could quit their job. But that is just a simple and quick example of the difference between relationship work and self development work. And a lot of the issues around relationship work is compassion and conscious communication, understanding that almost everybody brings stuff from their past into the present relationships. And these are the things that we need to work on, our failures in communicating from past relationships, so that we can give the new relationship the best opportunity possible to not just succeed, but to thrive. And I do feel that that comes through conscious communication, and see, that begins with the self and how we're able to communicate with ourselves. How honest we're able to be with ourselves determines how honest we are with others externally. So there's a lot to be gained here, but I do think that's an important differentiation between self development work and relationship work. And we love discussing both on this podcast.
And in order to fully utilize the just philosophy, you really have to really understand yourself on the energetic level. And we do use two systems or discuss two systems within this philosophy to help people identify who they are, what they brought in, how they interact with energy when they are around other people or just in general. And those are the destiny card system and the human design system. And again, those are outside of the philosophy, but they're just tools that we bring in. So then they can choose what they want to work on or what they can potentially work on and where they have strengths and where they have room to improve.
Yes, and these are two amazing astrological systems and numerology systems. We're not saying that they're better than any other systems that are out there. It's just the language matches with the philosophy. And again, that is the human design system and the destiny card system. And the cards help us to point out someone's personality and their potential higher self. And the path between that is this so called life. And most everyone is given two different cards, except for Leos. All Leos have two of the same card, but everyone else typically has two different cards. And so there is a difference between our actual personality. And remember, everyone, our personalities were trained to us by our families, by our school system, by our environments. But see, that doesn't necessarily mean that's truly who we are in our core. And for many people that feel lost, having an idea or being introduced to what their so-called birth card is, or their highest potential, can really help take a lot of the stress and strain off of, well, how do I even know what direction to go? And that system also offers us to be able to give yearly reports to help it break down to 52-day cycles that really help people to understand why maybe one week they're not worried about money, and then all of a sudden something happens and they start freaking out about money, and this could be just simply switching to a different influence that is happening. And then the human design helps through a visual to understand our chakras or energy centers. It's a 9 chakra system, and this helps to point out to people their energetic strengths of how they're affecting people around them and situations, And then the empathic natures, that's extremely important, of how each individual is being affected by the people and the situations around them. So overall, this helps with both of these systems to understand your personality, understand your higher self better, and then understand your energetic makeup of how you're being affected in this world and how you're being effective in this world.
So we did already mention one of the foundational principles, which was the 5 levels, but I did want to now jump into the 5 pillars, which is a very intricate part of this system in assisting people when you feel off and you feel like you're in an emotional reaction. When you feel like you're not seeing things clearly, you can go to the 5 pillars as like a rundown, and it will help you understand where you're not seeing things clearly or where you're not uh, currently balanced. And it's a really great check-in for that to help you get back to center, back grounded, once you can identify where, your perspective is kind of off in the current situation. It will kind of be a guide in alerting you, where you currently have work to do. So Alexander, I'm going to pass it off to you. Can you run through what the 5 pillars are?
Yes, and before I do that, I want to say that our mood is so affected by our perception, and mood is energy, another word for like energy. And so we are emotional beings, and we were designed to be emotional beings, but we were designed to process emotions. And that's what our culture and many other cultures has failed at, is that many of us were taught to suppress things and to power through, so to say. So one of the first steps in self-development work is what I call self-awareness. And it's being aware when you first start to get knocked off center, or knocked off that balance, knocked off of the present moment, however someone wants to say that. And the sooner that you can go into the correction of that, normally the quicker that you can bring that balance back in. But first, it has to be recognized and realized. Then I suggest that a person go be to themselves, remove themselves from other people and situations, and go into stillness, and then work with reciting either out loud or internally these 5 pillars. And now I'll list them. And each one of these pillars is connected to each one of the 5 levels. So that's the beauty of this language. If you don't know where you're stuck, like some people don't know where they're stuck. Is it the mental level? Is it the emotional, the spiritual, whatever? We'll see many times when you run these 5 pillars, the one that resonates with you most can give you a good idea of where the blockage may have been. So the first one is find the divine order in the chaos, or everything's in divine order whether I understand it or not. The second one is polarity versus duality. And we've got episodes on breaking these down, but a simple one here is that polarity does exist, but polarity mentality is accepting that opposites have to exist, and duality mentality is not accepting that opposites have to exist and wanting to overcome, so-called wanting love to overcome hate, or wanting birth to overcome death, like that type of view. And this plane is polarity. Opposites do have to exist, and that can help with how we perceive things and perceive people, especially people that have different opinions than us. The next one is going to be emotional responsibility and accountability. And this breaks down simply that when you truly stand in your power, no one can frustrate you, no one can make you mad, no one can make you sad. You realize that these are decisions that you choose. And to me, that is a huge power to stand in, that you realize that we can manage these emotions, which are just like children acting out. And it's not that they're bad, they just need to be taught over long period of time not to react, just like as optimally kids learn to not throw temper tantrums as they get older optimally. And so that is emotional responsibility and accountability. And then the fourth one is every situation and every person can be my teacher. See, that doesn't mean that everybody has something to learn in every situation. You have to want to learn it. You have to want to be the student. And if you are looking at life as being that student, then every interaction that you have in this life has something to teach you, especially on the emotional side. Then the fifth one is everything is vibration, which is another fact of physics. There are only moving particles on this earth plane. Nothing is truly solid. And what that can bring in is the simple idea that even with situations, health situations that they say there are no cure or no help for, um, this understanding helps to have a different outlook on that. That no, everything is adjustable, and therefore, if something is deteriorated, it can also over time be reevaluated and nurtured and brought back towards wellness. So those are the five pillars that are connected to the five levels, and they're the optimal tool from the Just Philosophy standpoint to bring you back to center when you do find yourself upset and you want to or need to shift that energy. Then go and be in stillness and reciting these principles is what helped me to come out of my healing crisis of 7 years after my wife died. And I needed to shift out of negative emotions quickly because I was feeling the subtle energy of pains that I'd never felt before. No doctors had any answers for me, and I chose not to go the pharmaceutical route. And so it was resolving it on the emotional level, which released the pressure on the energetic level. And see, we changed the perception on the mental level. We go back into trust on the spiritual level to help the physical level. So anyway, that's a condensed version of the connection between the five levels and the five pillars.
And if you want a more in-depth look at the five pillars and how to utilize them for your self-growth journey, we do have episode 51, which is titled A Do-It-Yourself Guide for Your Self-Development Journey Using the Pillars. But Alexander, thank you for doing that rundown. I really feel like that was a very good and thorough explanation of what we use the five pillars for and how they are related to the five levels. I had been writing down words that I feel like the philosophy has given me, and maybe other people out there can connect with some of these words or things that they hope to bring more, or that they're on a search to bring more into their lives, like vulnerability, acceptance, boundaries, which is a really a fun one.
Big one.
Groundedness, communication, conscious communication, especially in relationships, which is a big one. Depth, more connection, and emotional management. And if you've ever been around somebody that can really manage their emotions, they have a power to them that that is very attractive. I remember right before I met you, Alexander, I was with somebody who was able to just bring her energy in and just become grounded whenever she wanted to. And of course, that frustrated me because it was an emotional reaction. But there was always a part of me that knew that that was what I wanted to do that. I wanted to master that. I knew that that was like truth, that was what I was here to learn how to do. And so eventually, within a year was when I met you and I began my own self-growth journey. But transitioning now into some of the other tools and techniques outside of the five levels, outside of the five pillars, this philosophy has a language that really helps us apply just like the principles of energy and physics to our self-growth, to our emotions, looking at emotions as children, just there's just this language about it that simplifies all of these things that we're trying to learn how to do. And we find people on like Facebook Reels and Instagram and TikTok, and they're like giving us like little pieces of it. And we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I know I found that when something like resonates on that level where it's like, oh, that makes sense. It's really just, it makes sense because it's how energy works and it's how we've observed things, but we've never had a language to put to it. And this was what attracted me to you the first time I met you was you were explaining things on, you were using language on a level that I've always like observed on a subtle energy level, but nobody ever explained them to me from a way that I could pinpoint and understand that, oh, that's what I've been like really understanding and feeling my whole life. But you were applying this language to it. And that is, one of the big reasons that attracted me to you and to the Just philosophy. But one of the main ones that we talk about a lot is the three R's. And I would love if you could run us through that.
Yes, the power of the three R's, which is recognize the person, place, or situation, learn to respect the person, place, or situation, and then learn to redirect the person, place, or situation. And in that, so going that quick steps with that is like recognizing that you're off, that what somebody just said maybe offended you. We would use that as an example. And so when you recognize that you're off emotionally, then you need to remove yourself to go to be to yourself. And then you need to respect that emotion that come up. So say that someone talked down to you, belittled you, and then you go to be to yourself, and then you want to respect that. So, see, you want to respect that so called inner child that just got talked down to. And maybe there's something you can relate to earlier in your life, like maybe this was a father figure or a brother that talked down to you and treated you in this way that, see, this person in the present's just reminding you of. So here we say that the emotional reaction at the present time has little to do with the actual situation happened presently. It's combining many similar situations throughout your whole life. So when you can learn to respect that emotion, like feeling insecure or not worthy, and then you say, well, in that, thank you, first of all, person in the present, because you're being my teacher now to remind me that I still have some healing to do where insecurity is involved. And we love that part of us, and we go back and we show appreciation to that little Alexander, say 7 years old, when I remember my father talking down to me like that, hypothetically. And then I understand that, hey, my dad was loving me. He was he was doing his best in his own way to help me. My little boy felt judged and ridiculed. But see, we can change the perception that easy when we're able to see it in a different light. And instead of me staying upset with my father for talking down to me, if I can see him in the light of helping me, then see, that's bringing respect into this experience. And that now I'm just not an emotional basket case. I see what it relates to in my past, and I'm choosing to see that past from a different perception, which is going to change the way that I see things moving forward in everyday life. And then that's where we're leading towards the redirection. In the redirect, we're going to get back to center before we go engage with anybody or any other situation. And that is redirecting the energy rather than staying stuck in that belittlement, in that insecurity, whatever that brought up. But see, many people, they want to redirect just after recognizing something. They're skipping the respect level. And that's where I feel that the biggest lesson is. So again, we have episodes on this that go a little bit more in depth. So recognize, respect, redirect.
Yeah, this philosophy is not for those just looking for a quick fix. This is a
No.
recipe for, a lifestyle, a life change, for people looking, at the bottom and they're ready. I know I was thinking about the book that you talked about that you always wanted to write. You had a name for it. I don't know if you want to share that. It's funny.
Yes, information for a small percentage of the population, and you're probably not one of them.
Yeah. It's funny. But you're creating that attraction Because then
Yes.
there's people like, oh, well, why am I not one of them?
Yeah,
But
maybe it would be, and you may or may not be one of them. Would be
yeah,
the more balanced way to say that. But it was from more of a comedic
yeah,
standpoint, and just realizing that yes, some people are intrigued by what they feel like they can't have.
yeah, and that's all energy. And when you can utilize like this work, you would be able to see that that's energy, and then be able to understand and dissect. Well, why am I attracted to that? And that's a huge point of this work as well. It is part of the next thing I was going to bring up is the 6 principles of relating, and attraction is one of those. The difference between attraction and love, with attraction being something that you instantly can see and recognize, and love is more of a choice, is more of a creation over time.
Yeah, yeah. So we do say we'll list these as attraction happens, love is developed, trust is earned, respect is given, forgiveness is a necessity, and energy remembers. So, just on those 6 principles, again, these are just reminders that sometimes people feel that they had love at first sight. And I'm not here to say that that happens or doesn't happen, but I do trust that attraction at first sight happens. And too many people base relationships around attraction. But love has to be developed, and many times the deepest levels of love is developed through hard times and through times of challenge when the two people come together and overcome a challenge to some extent. So see, that's a big part of development and developing over time and investment in somebody. And then again, many people give their trust away. Here we suggest no, allow trust to be built over time by consistency of actions and integrity, words matching those actions. I think that that's very important. And you know, respect, we should all be willing to give respect. Um, if somebody starts acting or talking in a way that takes that respect away, then allow them to do that. But be willing to respect people, from the beginning. And the forgiveness is necessary is just I really want people to get this one is that, you holding on to a grudge or you waiting for an apology for somebody is only harming yourself. And forgiveness is something that we need to first start with ourselves and then develop that with others. And this helps with the first pillar of everything's being in divine order. When you truly understand that, then there's nothing that you need to get back at anybody about. And then energy remembers just simply means that whatever you do consistently, it's going to create a energetic wave to pull you towards that. So this is why it's very hard for people to break so-called negative habits, is that they've done it for so long that it takes an ample amount of time. We have a saying of gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results. And that's what we're talking about in the beginning when we were saying that we start off with structure and discipline and holding ourselves accountable. But then after we do it over 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, it starts to become just part of who we are. And we don't have to struggle with that discipline and structure and accountability as much. So I'm so glad to bring all these points up in a kind of refreshed episode. But was there anything else that you wanted to highlight before we wrap this session up?
Yeah, just listing off some of the other important tools and techniques that people, if they hear it, maybe they can go back to an episode of the Wise podcast and see.
Yes.
But we have roles, which is big in self development work, but also relationship work. The 360-degree view of emotional processing. That's a big one as well for self development work, especially the 6 priorities in relationships. Kind of like a little mini test or quiz that you can do with your significant other to see where your priorities of where you put your energy align or don't align, and then once you become aware of that and conscious of that, then you can kind of open up the lines of communication around that and have an understanding of how your partner works. Otherwise, we're just kept in the dark, and these things can create so many issues because they're never really spoken of because they're never really, there's not like a light being shined upon them. And then we also have the roles that we bring into relationships, like by default, whether that be a provider, a protector, a nurturer, or a teacher. And just, understanding those. But that's just a small part of the tools and techniques. There are others. And again, we have over 160 episodes where we're just diving deep and discussing the Just philosophy. And part of that is also the Inward Journey story series, where Alexander and I wrote stories, had a narrator read them, added sound effects, music, and kind of like a different creative way of sharing this work. And then Alexander and I came on and we discussed how the characters could bring in more consciousness within their lives. But we definitely have dove deep into many subjects that I'm sure you guys out there are very interested in. But I did want to wrap this up by saying, if you're interested in learning more about the human design or the destiny cards, Alexander does do readings for those especially, but also does his own private consultations around this work. So if you're, intrigued and you've dove deep into a few episodes of the Wise podcast and you're gelling and you want to dive right in and see what's going on in your life and how this philosophy can help you, Alexander can help you with that. You can email him at alexander@thejustphilosophy.com. You can also go to thejustphilosophy.com and see more about his offerings. He has the VibroTune sound table that he invented, where you lay on that and low-level sound waves engulf your body, and in just 15 minutes, you feel like you did an hour meditation. It definitely helps to move that energy and allow you to feel invigorated and grounded at the same time. Definitely have seen some people come off that table who were way up here and are immediately brought down to a more natural state. And then if you're interested in the Wise podcast, we do have our entire back catalog available for $4.99 a month. We call it the Wise Complete Conversation. You could head over to wisewisepodcast.com, WISEWHYS podcast.com, and you can see all of our episodes there and get more information on that. With that said, Alexander, what would you like to leave the good people with?
Well, just with love and compassion, and wherever you're at, be there fully, and know that wherever you're at is exactly where you're supposed to be. And you can shift that vibration simply by the way you perceive things daily and the actions that you take. And we just send so much support and compliments toward everybody that is out there doing their own version of the work. And we hope that this philosophy and podcast can be a great tool for you. So please reach out, contact us for private sessions or just to let us know how you're resonating with the information. And much love to everyone.
Yes, and we are available wherever podcasts are, but on YouTube, we do have a video cast. If you haven't checked us out there, you can put some faces to the voices. So again, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for checking us out on this overview of the Just Philosophy or any one of our Wise podcast episodes.
Much love.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just Philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here, you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.